Does your business provide a quality service or product? If the answer is yes, then there is a combination of tactics that can be customized to fit your unique business that makes your business super profitable, creates wealth, and makes a difference in the process. I know this because I've built a few tiny businesses to more than $70 million. You're listening to the Entrepreneurs Radio Show. Conversations with self-made millionaires and high-level entrepreneurs that will grow your business. Hey, it's Travis Lane Jenkins. Welcome to episode number 116 of the Entrepreneurs Radio Show, a production of RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com, where, as always, each and every week, my focus is to connect you with rockstar entrepreneurs that explain their journey to success, including failures, and what's been the key principles to finding that high level of success as an entrepreneur. Now, today I'm excited to introduce you to Cameron Herold. Cameron has helped build a well-known business, a business that you probably would recognize, from $2 million in annual revenues to $106 million in just 7 years with no debt and no outside shareholders. In other words, bootstrap. Not to mention he's done this for multiple other companies as well. So as always, I'm confident that you'll find value in listening to the wisdom and advice that this guest shares with us during this interview. Now, before we get started, I want to say thank you to Robert Bowden for the 5 stars and the written review on iTunes. Robert says, amazing content. The Entrepreneurs Radio Show is well worth the listen, and the content was amazing. We'll definitely leverage what I learned here in the future. I definitely recommend subscribing to the show. So thanks a bunch for that, Robert. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you have time and find value in the show, I'd really appreciate it if you'd let me know how we're doing. Write us a review, rate the show, give us a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star rating, whatever you think we deserve. And, of course, I'll recognize you on air and say thank you if you take the time to do that. One last thing before we get started, remember that there's 3 easy ways to take the shows with you on the go through iTunes, Android, or Stitcher. Just go to RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com and click on the iTunes, Android, or Stitcher button right there on the menu bar. It will take you directly to the podcast where you can subscribe if that's something that you want to do. Now that we get that out of the way, let's get out to business. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Cameron.
Hey, Travis. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. Hey, you've got a pretty interesting story here. Do you mind giving us kind of the background on your story and what brought you to your success today?
Sure. In a lot of ways, I was raised as an entrepreneur. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Both grandfathers owned companies. My dad owned one. And today, my brother and sister and I all own our own companies. Even my wife and both of her parents owned companies. So cool. I was surrounded in that entrepreneurship world. I ran my first business when I was in my 20s. I had a number of entrepreneurial ventures prior to that, which I actually talk about on my TED Talk that's on TED.com about raising entrepreneurial kids. So I really grew up in that entrepreneurial world, not a corporate, not a formal education world. Got a lot of training running a house painting business when I was back in my 20s. Then I went on and I built out a chain of auto body collision repair shops with a couple of partners. I built a private currency company. And then I joined one of my good friends and we built out a company that we expanded across North America and into Australia called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And I kind of got known for that business, except the ones before all had really big household names. Gerber was the auto body chain and College Pro Painters was the house painting company. So I'd been involved in growing big professional businesses that had amazing cultures and strong profitability and good growth and lots of PR. And I started being asked to do a lot of speaking events, doing a lot of the speaking events globally. I've now spoken in 28 countries. I started getting asked to write my content into a book. So I wrote a book 4 years ago called Double Double. Seth Godin wrote the cover testimonial for that, and it's been available all over the world for the last 4 years. So that's really what I've been doing and where I came from. And now what I do is I work behind the scenes coaching CEOs of companies that want to be more entrepreneurial and want to grow in a better and faster way. So I've got clients that are as small as about $3 million in revenue, and my largest current client is $700 million in revenue. So all across the board.
Well, I'm curious. So there's, I've taken businesses through several growth stages myself, although I haven't reached the $100 million mark. And so there's thresholds. There's 500,000, there's $1 million, there's 3 million, there's 5 million. Things change, even 10 million. Things constantly change in a business model that you have to focus on, especially when you're driving the growth of that business. How did you have that acumen, or where did the acumen come from to grow businesses to these levels?
Some of it came from a lesson my dad gave me when I was quite young, and he just said, you'll never be smart enough to figure this out on your own. He said, your R&D has to stand for rip off and duplicate. All the best companies on the planet have been figuring stuff out for years and spending millions of dollars to figure it out. Just state what the problem is, or state the opportunity, and find out who's doing the best job and just do what they're doing. And it'll come to you a lot faster and a lot easier. So that was lesson one. And then lesson two came from an Olympic coach, and he said, you really need to visualize what the future of the business looks like. Lean out 3 years into the future and describe what the company looks and feels like 3 years from today, or what a project looks like in its finished state. And once you know what it looks like in its finished state, you can reverse engineer it and figure out what to do to get there.
Brilliant advice. And so did you go through these processes on your own, or did you seek mentorship, or how did you go about that?
We were a part of an organization called EO, which was the Entrepreneurs Organization. And they bring entrepreneurs from around the world, and they essentially mentor each other on a monthly basis. They bring in guest speakers, but they also work kind of in a forum mastermind environment to learn from others that are already doing stuff and to hold yourself accountable. So it was a process of learning from them, and also just taking the systems that are already there, that are proven, and doing it. Most people that I see out there keep reading, but they don't do anything that they're reading. Once you've read 3 or 4 of the best business books, you probably have enough to double the size of your business. The problem is most people don't do it. They just get sucked back into email and being busy.
Right.
So I was kind of taking the dumb approach. I was just like, well, if the experts say to do it, I'll just do it, and I'll trust that it'll happen. And sure enough, by doing it, it happened.
Oh, I think what happens is people get on a diet of consuming books, and they never stop. And this is kind of a reverse of, or exactly what you were saying, but on a deeper level, they never implement. It's just almost like just an education junkie, right? And in the true wisdom comes in the implementing. I think maybe that's what people are missing is they want to make sure that they've got everything down perfect in the process, but doing and making mistakes and then correcting it is where the hyper learning occurs, right?
And it's also where the growth occurs. There's a lot of the truisms that come from science play out, or even from our grandmother, play out in business. Right. One of the ones that we hear from science, from physics, is that momentum creates momentum. Mm-hmm. So to get momentum, you just have to start things and execute, and then you'll learn a little bit, but at least you're making forward progress. Perfectionism and procrastination is what slows everything down. Right. But no one really cares what any of your listeners ever got on their university transcript. Mm-hmm. There's not a single one of us running a company today that the A+ or the 94% mattered. 72% and 94%, once you've been out for a month, it's the same grade. No one's ever going to care. Right. It's the same with that perfect marketing piece. You'd be better to just get the marketing piece out there and learn from it than to sit in your office waiting for perfect 3 months later.
Right.
Momentum creates momentum.
Well, I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and recently I had mentioned to her and her mother, I said, I'm not completely convinced you need to go to college. I would almost rather see you go down a path of learning skills of being a business owner and becoming an entrepreneur. And they both were offended by the idea. And, I'm concerned that there's a preconceived notion that everybody needs to go through college. And I've come to realize that entrepreneurship is the best self-improvement program that I could have ever signed up for.
Yeah, I think unless you're going to become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or a dentist where you need formal training,
Right.
I don't think going for a university general arts degree makes any sense whatsoever.
Right.
I think what makes a lot more sense is going and apprenticing for some companies like people did 100 years ago. 100 years ago, maybe 5% of the population went on to formal education, but we've been brainwashed into thinking it's the only path.
Right.
It's not the only path. It's just become a very successful business and government grant program in the United States.
Right.
What people need to do is, again, lean out into the future and say, what do I want to do? What are the different paths or different options I could do to get there? And if you wanted to go get some experience and some theory and some networking, you're going to get a lot of that by just going and working for 4 great companies. So go and offer up yourself for free, for minimum wage, for whatever they'll pay you for the next 4 years. Work for one company for a year, another company for a year. Do that 4 times. And at the end of your 4 years, you'll have more experience, more theory, more connections, and more fun than you will have by going to university. And you'll come out with no debt.
Right, right.
When you go to university, you're going to come out with a lot of theory, but not necessarily any connections for future work. And you're going to come out with a pile of debt. It doesn't make sense to me why everyone goes down that path blindly.
Right. It is a good choice for somebody, like you said. Some people, it's the right path, but we've been brainwashed into believing that it's the right path for everybody, and it's just not. Now, one of the key things that you mentioned that I wish I would have changed is I had really good success in business in growing it early on, 100%, 400%, and then, just continual growth like that over the years. Although I never sought true mentorship until about 15 years of being in business, 16 years in business, and it completely changed who I was, how I did things, and put me on a whole new level. And I don't think this is spoke of often enough or suggested often enough of getting in some type of environment, mastermind, the EO organization that you described, because you're around a group of people that can help nurture the positive attitude and ideas and give you some of the business acumen and support that you need to grow that business. There's just not enough emphasis on that. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, I think a lot of people try to work hard instead of working smart. A lot of people, and we've been ingrained in the university system and high school system and grade school education, is that it's about reading everything, learning everything, and memorizing everything instead of kind of finding a better way. Well, the better way is essentially cheating. It's cheating in that everyone else already has the answers. See, in school, we're told not to talk to anybody because you're supposed to do it all on your own. So we end up building a bad habit. Whereas a really good habit is everyone else already has the answers. Go and talk to a bunch of other people and kind of absorb that wisdom of the crowds and do what the best are already doing.
Exactly.
It's a bit of a vulnerability issue where we're taught to pretend that we're smart instead of pretending that we're dumb and putting our hand up and saying, I don't know this. It's actually okay to put your hand up and say, I don't know it, because about 15 people are around you that don't know it either.
Right. And, I'd said this to a group of people recently. I said, what we do in masterminds would be considered cheating in school.
Right.
And they were all confused and somewhat offended by that, or had a perplexed look on their face. And most people never think about it like that. One has humility and one doesn't. To say you don't know the answers and you'd like some help by others that have already achieved it is the way that I would prefer all my friends and family approach life, rather than the opposite way. So I think that's the core problem with school in itself. Right.
It's teaching very, very bad habits, which is that only one person can know, and don't work around with other people and, sit and try to memorize everything. Well, it's crazy. The answers are either on Google or someone's already done it. So for the most part, unless you're trying to do a PhD and invent something, you don't need to be the only person in the room.
Right. Right. So one of the things that I want to highlight is the epic amount of success that you had with the 1-800-GOT-JUNK. You helped the company grow from $2 million to $105 million in 6 years. That's, crazy growth. What was the key principles to making that happen?
There were three. One was really getting everyone completely aligned with the same vision so that everyone could see what the CEO could see. And we used the concept that I teach now called the painted picture, where people literally lean out into the future and describe the company in its finished state 3 years out into the future. I cover it in depth in chapter 1 of my book, Double Double. The second thing that we did was we created a real great world-class culture that attracted people to our company like a magnet. We were just an amazing place to work. Not because of the foosball table in the Wii room, but because we had people aligned, we had people in the right roles, we had amazing people there. We coached and mentored people, and we hired amazing, driven A-level players, so people just wanted to be around that. And then the third was we leveraged free PR. We really worked hard to get the media talking about our company. And what we got them to talk about was our culture and our future. So the more that the press talked about how great we were, the greater we became. And it was really those three things: leveraging vision and alignment of people, making sure the culture was fantastic, and leveraging the free press.
So what part of the organization were you involved with, or how does some of those steps deal with the growth of the business? Some of it deals with the acquisition of talent, and the other deals with, I guess, making sure that everyone's on the same page. What was some of the underpinnings? And all of those completely make sense and a brilliantly simple, succinct way of doing it. What were some of the underpinnings of how you were able to ignite the growth once you got all of these three core things in alignment?
So I was the chief operating officer. I came in as the 14th employee. When I left, we had 3,100 employees system-wide.
Wow.
I ran everything except IT and finance. At the end of the day, that was what ignited it. When you get, as Jim Collins from Good to Great said, when you get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus and everybody in the right seats, that's the first step. The next part is making sure that all those people are aligned so that they're all pulling in that same direction. So that they're all, if everyone can see the same movie that the CEO can see, you don't have to hold anyone accountable. They're holding themselves accountable. So the systems that we use to do that, the painted picture is what aligned with the vision. And I cover that in great detail in my book, Double Double. The second thing that we used was the systems from top grading around getting the right people into the company, very rigorous interviewing process. We made sure that we hired people that both culturally fit and had the skill set to do their job. There's that old adage of hire for attitude, train for skill, and that's not going to work. That never, ever, ever is enough. What you really, really need is to hire the people who have done it before and have the theory, right? The cultural fit. Mm-hmm. They asked Herb Kelleher from Southwest Airlines, geez, how do you get all your people to smile so much? We hire smiley people.
Right.
You can't train a grumpy person to be happy, so you just hire happy people. So I think most people miss out on that. They hire the really smart person who's done it before, and they're like, well, I know he's a bit of a jerk, but he's really smart. Well, great. Now you've got a cancer inside your organization.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting way of looking at it, and it definitely makes sense.
I was asked by Fortune magazine years ago. They said, how do you motivate your employees? And I said, I don't. I hire motivated people. When you hire motivated people, you don't have to hold them accountable. They hold themselves accountable.
Right. And 3 A players can replace 7 to 8 regular players.
Correct.
Very few people realize that. So now, was all of your marketing the earned media stuff, or was there any paid traffic? And then you guys also slid a franchise model up under that also, didn't you?
Yeah, the franchising was one of the vehicles for our growth. It was a way that we could grow quickly and really have people vested in the growth, really having skin in the game. Again, hiring accountable people. It allowed, when we had a franchisee in a market, it allowed us to grow quickly because they were very, very keen to grow their market.
That skin in the game, right?
The PR for us was really the core of our marketing strategy. We did a lot of guerrilla marketing, just even things like parking our trucks in high-profile locations. A lot of people are afraid of doing guerrilla marketing. They think that paid is the only way to go. Well, not necessarily. And then we became very, very good at understanding in the early days areas that people are just figuring out today. I had a client that I was coaching recently, and he's still doing Yellow Page advertising. I'm like, kidding? Like, no one uses Yellow Pages. And he goes, well, 75-year-olds do. And I'm like, yeah, but you just told me that 35-year-old females are your target market. So what do you care if an 80-year-old is using Yellow Pages?
Right.
They don't go to you. So it's just following the real basic advice and just sticking to it. A lot of people, again, are always looking for that silver bullet. They're looking for that magic pill, and they're looking for the easy way out. Well, there isn't an easy way out. What works is working smart, not working hard.
I completely agree, and I'm guilty of, I consider myself a good soldier, so at times in my career of building businesses, I've been guilty of working hard instead of smart, and I paid the price for years for that. Several other things that I notice about the business that are just brilliantly simple that allow the business to grow is, the name's just straightforward, easy, simple. 1-800-GOT-JUNK, right? Multi-purpose name, right? It's the name and also the phone number.
We got that basic marketing rule from a book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Ries. Al Ries is really one of the godfathers of marketing and branding, and we just followed the 22 rules. And if you read the 22 rules of marketing or branding, you'd realize that our name literally follows the rules that he laid out for us.
Right.
Where most people don't spend any time on that. They try to pick something unique and creative, and we just realized that if our name was our phone number, people would call. And then as we started to grow, we created that brand back in 1999, so the internet wasn't even that strong at that point. But it became our URL, and then we worked really hard at creating 30% of our customers to book online. So it just became a way to decrease our expenses and grow our brand and grow our recurring revenue.
Yeah, plus the trucks are clean, good looking, and the signs, it reflects an image. Before this company, I don't know if you guys were the first one to do this. I want to say that you were the first ones to really come up with a business model for hauling off junk from the house. Or
there were actually 17,000 independent junk removal companies the day we started. What we did was we professionalized and cleaned up an industry. So I used to be with College Pro Painters, which is the largest residential house painting company. I helped build that group across North America. And we did the same thing with the house painting industry, where it used to be the house painter with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and showing up all dirty, and we just professionalized it.
Right.
Think about Starbucks when they really kind of got going in the mid-'90s, early 90s, people were walking around the city with a white coffee cup. No one had white coffee cups with their brand on it, and no one played jazz in their coffee shops, and no one charged 50% more than everyone else. So that's what we did. We put the clean, shiny trucks on the road, the friendly, uniformed drivers. We charged a premium for our service, but we blew people away on the customer service side when they expected a grumpy, greasy, old, guy to haul garbage show up at their house, and we showed up with a bunch of fraternity boys in golf shirts.
And that's exactly what the choice was. Prior to that is some really grungy looking guys that were kind of scary looking, beat up trucks, torn up trailers that would come haul off the junk. Although I felt like I needed to be home when they come to get the junk, because nobody wanted, I didn't want them to be home with my wife by herself. So yeah. Exactly what you were saying. And
it happens in all kinds of industries. It happens in dentistry. It happens in medical offices. When we created our auto body location, we decided to paint the walls white and then have all of our marketing to be female friendly, because we knew that females would tell other people about it. Guys wouldn't tell anyone. We painted the walls white because it would force us to keep the location super clean.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's about making very conscious choices and deciding to set yourself out against the industry.
So you sit down and actually engineer the entire experience out and pay attention to...
We pay attention to what Jim Collins said, the critical few things
right.
versus the important many things.
Right.
So what are the critical few things in your product or your service? What are those critical few things that really matter? I was talking to a guy who owns a dental clinics today down in California, and he's doing some orthodontic work. And I said, who are your customers? And he said, well, it's women, and they're typically 35 to 45, and they've got kids. And I said, well, why does all your marketing read like it's focused to men? He goes, geez, I never thought about it. What story? Like he never thought about who his target audience was. So nothing happens by accident. Always reverse engineer it.
Right.
Think about what you want your clients to say, and then tell them those things, and they'll say those things.
Right. Ultimately, it's the 80-20 principle, right?
Exactly. Think about what you want them to see.
Right.
And tell them they're going to see it.
Right. Yeah, it's so simple. It's surprising on some levels. That's a common problem I see, is most people really never get a clear understanding of who their most ideal client is. Everyone feels like they could serve, well, I could serve everybody. Yeah. Well, you can serve everybody, but who would be your dream? Who could you deliver the absolute best experience for?
I had a client that I started coaching and mentoring about two and a half years ago, and when I first started coaching him, he had, talking about opening up in the United States and how he was going to expanding all through the United States. And I was like, wait. Like, let's look at what your goals are for your company 5 years out, 3 years out. And then he realized that he could be 3 or 4 times bigger than his 3-year goals just being in Canada alone. Mm-hmm. He didn't have to overcomplicate it by going into a second country. Most people aren't focused. If you think about light, if you just disperse light, it'll light up a room. But if you highly concentrate that light, it becomes a laser and it can cut through steel.
Right.
How focused are our people? How focused is our marketing? How focused are we with our time?
Yeah, excellent point. So I think that I cut you off whenever you were explaining some of the other aspects of the marketing. Did you say you guys did start using paid traffic or paid marketing for Got Junk also?
We did, but not in the early days. In the early days, we started to tell all of our offline customers that they could book online. We started to tell all of our offline customers where to book online. We started to put as a PS on all of our emails that people could book online. So we started to convert all the people who we had, moving them online and then asking them to refer people. Once we started to move that group, then we started to look for other new customers in an online space. But we wanted to leverage the group that we already had and convert them over and get them to tell everyone. And it's easier to get the group you have talking than it is to attract a whole new group of people.
Right. So focused on grassroots stuff then first.
Yeah, you think about every one of your clients. Does every email that goes out from every single employee of theirs at least contain some kind of a PS? Probably doesn't. Mm-hmm. And does the PS contain what you want people to tell? It probably doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about that. Interesting. I'm reflecting on, as you asked that question, I'm reflecting on the emails that I read, even the emails that I send. I'm a big PS user.
It's an easy form of marketing.
Right.
We were told that, we've been told that our whole lives that the most read part of a letter is the PS, and yet most of us don't do it. And we sit around waiting for the magic bullet, but we miss out on the hundreds of perfect bullets that we already have.
Right. Let me ask you, what are some of the key performance indicators, KPIs, that you look for typically in a business? Do they change, or do you have a core set of KPIs for practically every business?
Well, they absolutely change. They change based on what the core focus of the organization is. What I look for is also more of an economic denominator. So I look for the per something as a KPI. Is it per employee? Is it per revenue? Is it per location? Is it per what? So often you measure a lot of things per something versus just measuring a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So the way I figure out the KPIs is both looking for lagging and leading indicators. Is I take each business area and they come up with 10 things that they would have to measure so that they would know that they're on track to hit their goals for their business area, which would in turn help the company hit their goals. Once each business area comes up with the 10 things that they would need to be tracking, then we look at what would the top 2 or 3 things be from each business area. And then what can we look at that is going to be a leading indicator to show us where we're going, where to forecast, and what can we look at based on our past numbers to kind of pull off that data. So yeah, there's not one, for me in my business, it's how many paid speaking events do I have on my calendar? Because that shows me how many books I'll sell, how much my digital content people will buy to download, how many coaching programs I'll be able to sell. it's all predicated off the number of speaking events I have booked currently going forward.
So let's take one of the service businesses, just a random service business. Give me a feel of what some of those KPIs would be for one of the service businesses, and you don't need to give us the name, as a great example for people to kind of get their arms around.
So again, it depends, right? Are you driving? So if your core goals are, revenue, profit, customer engagement, employee engagement, and some kind of a strategic initiative, mm-hmm. that will determine what your KPIs or your core few KPIs are going to be. Mm-hmm. Early days at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we wanted to be in the top 30 metro markets by 2003. So we leaned out into 2003 and started to figure out, how to do that. So it was always, how are we doing towards that track of, 30? If it was
30 markets, yeah.
If it was being in 30% of our clients booking online, we would then be tracking data around that. Are we getting click-throughs? What's our bounce rate like? What's our conversion rate like? What's our new traffic like? We would be looking for marketing activities like remarketing to be able to leverage that and drive more of it. If it was in the early days, we were looking at our revenue, and we knew that one way to get our revenue up was to get our full load rate up, to get our average job size up. So we taught people how to sell more and how to identify bigger jobs and how to go after commercial work. So it just depends. What is it you're driving? Lean out 3 years and look at what your goals are, and then figure out how do you make that happen.
Right. So example could be average, maybe it's opt-ins, maybe it's conversions, maybe it is average ticket price. So, if you're wanting to, maybe one of the things you were using the example that you just gave, you guys were wanting to increase revenue, and so maybe you were getting a lot of half and quarter loads, and so you taught the guys how to upsell, and that way they could get a full load, the difference between maybe $300 and $500, right?
Yep. And so that's exactly what we did, is we thought about what the goal was, and then we came up with a few strategic initiatives or projects to make that goal come true.
Right.
Again, what most people don't do is they don't lean out into the future, so they simply work harder instead of figuring out where are they going and what are the different things they can do to make it happen.
Yeah. I like to break examples down like that because a lot of times people get lost in the theory. And every time I want to accomplish something, we work in Basecamp. And so we may set up an objective to accomplish ABC. Working with this one doctor, he's wanting accreditation. And we break all of the pieces down, all the steps down, and so that we can start knocking those out. And that's really emblematic of what you're talking about, is you get a clear picture of what you want, break it into pieces, reverse engineer it, and if you're not accomplishing those steps, then you'll never accomplish the goal. Ultimately, the micro creates the macro, right?
Cool. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent example there. Let me ask you, what book or program made an impact on you related to business that you'd recommend, and why would you recommend it?
I think for a lot of businesses, it goes right back to the E-Myth, which is about putting the systems in place to grow the business, and looking for missing systems or broken systems versus blaming people for mistakes. A lot of people are too quick to blame people instead of looking for the missing system. And I'll give you a very big company example of how this small system works so perfectly. One of my mentors was being groomed as the chief operating officer at Starbucks. And he got a phone call from Howard Schultz one day. This is about 10 years ago. And Howard said, "Why is the letter B on the sign at the 50th and Wallingford location in Seattle? Why is the letter B on the sign not working?" And my mentor started to laugh. He said, "Are you kidding? That's not the question you're allowed to ask me." And Howard got pissed off and he goes, "Well, I care." My mentor said, "Well, I care too. But the question you need to ask is, what system do we have in place to ensure that all letters on all signs at all locations are always working?" So that's a question I'll answer. But I'm not going to tell you why the letter B is out, because I don't give a shit why the letter B is out. What I do care is that we don't have a system in place to ensure that all letters on all signs at all locations are always working.
Excellent point.
So that's a basic system idea that comes from Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth. But again, most of your caller or listeners will get off the call, and as soon as something wrong happens, they're going to blame one of their employees instead of saying, what system was it? It could have been an interviewing or hiring system that allowed the wrong person to get into the company.
Right.
It could be a missing system that has people carrying too many projects or has too much on their plate. Or it could, always look for the missing or broken system.
Well said. Excellent point. What's one of your favorite tools or pieces of technology that you've recently discovered, if any, that you'd recommend to other business owners, and why?
I think one of the most basic ones, and it's been around forever, we probably only have about another 12 months of being able to use it before everyone's using it, and this is going to sound silly, but it's Skype video. Just basic Google video or Skype video or Zoom video, any kind of normal video conference. If you can speak to all of your customers or all of your employees that are remotely via video, you build a huge relationship. Much stronger than audio, much stronger than over the phone. But the video face-to-face connection is extraordinarily powerful. And when you do that, you will hold on to those customers forever.
So you really feel like there's that big of a difference between turning the video on?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. Again, the face-to-face connection you develop from the video itself is what will build the relationship. If you own the relationship, no one will take that customer or prospect away from you.
I've never thought about it like that. I guess reflecting on it, it aligns with what happens naturally anyways, right?
Exactly. When you're having the face-to-face discussions with people, it's powerful. But imagine if you have a potential customer. So all of my clients are all over the world. The CEOs that I coach are everywhere. I just signed a client yesterday who I start coaching in August, who's based in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
He owns a huge organization in Saudi. I have a client that I've been coaching for about 6 months who's based in Australia. I have another one who's based in the UK. I have them all over the United States. But I don't ever go and meet with them, or rarely do I go and meet with them in person. But I feel like I know them intimately because we're able to talk on video for 90 minutes every 2 weeks.
And you always use the video.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's free. It doesn't cost us anything. It costs you nothing to have a relationship with someone face-to-face.
And so why do you feel like that we're only going to have this for another year? Are you saying you think they're going to go to a pay model?
No, I think it's going to become ubiquitous. I think that all of the phone calls are going to include videos, so that you literally won't have a chance to take that away from your competitor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not that it's free so much as the fact that video builds a relationship, but if everyone's using video, then you've lost that strategic advantage.
Okay. I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to shift because I'm guilty. I'm a very auditory person, and I'm guilty of not doing the video aspect of that with my coaching clients. And I'm going to make that change because it just makes too much sense.
Yeah, I was coaching a guy who's based in the UK years ago, and we've been coaching for about 18 months. We were having breakfast one morning in Hong Kong at a conference we were both at. And after about 20 minutes into into our breakfast, he jumped up, practically leapt across the table and gave me a hug. And I started to laugh. I'm like, what was that all about? He goes, I just realized we've never met in person. Because we've been talking on video 90 minutes every 2 weeks for a year and a half, I felt like I knew this person better than I knew my parents.
Right?
That's really powerful, and it's free. Again, It's the critical few things we can do versus the important many.
Excellent point. Thank you for that. I'm going to use it.
You're welcome.
So what quote would best summarize your belief or your attitude in business?
Vision without execution is hallucination. That was Thomas Edison.
Say that again.
Vision without execution is hallucination.
So true.
It really comes down to the fact that you can have all these great goals and these great ideas, but if you don't actually start working on it, it'll never happen.
It's so true. That's why it's laughable to me.
It's just so darn simple, right?
It really is. It really is. And I've come to realize that that's kind of the underpinning of your brilliance is a lot of the things that you talk about are brilliantly straightforward and simple.
See, I was never smart enough to go to a normal MBA program. I couldn't go and get a formal education because I didn't have the grades and I didn't have the ability to sit and focus like that. So I had to learn kind of by finding all the shortcuts. I almost wish that my grandparents wouldn't have told me to work hard. I wish they'd told me to work smart.
Right. Well, I think you need to be comfortable with yourself, because I have found that a lot of people that speak and make things much more complicated than necessary are a lot of times just trying to convey their intelligence rather than help you.
Exactly. I had a mentor years ago, 25 years ago, who said, if you can't write it down on a half a page of paper, you haven't thought about it clearly enough, and don't talk to me about it until you can.
Right.
And it was really powerful, because now I realize that people overcomplicate everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cut the BS and get to the point, right?
Exactly.
Hey, let me ask you, how do people connect with you?
So my website is doubledoubleTheBook.com, doubledoubleTheBook.com, and it's got all my contact information right there.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Remember that you can find all the links to the books and resources mentioned in the show notes. Just go to rockstarentrepreneur.network.com. Now, while you're there, opt in and you'll get my personal email. And then just take a few minutes and tell me what you feel like is holding you back in your business right now. What do you feel like the major thing is that's holding you back from accomplishing your dreams? And I'll give you my feedback on air to help you move your business forward right now. I've helped businesses grow their profits by more than 2,000% with giving them advice on what to do with overcoming those obstacles. And increasing your bottom line, your net profits by 2,000% is life-changing. So I want to encourage you to take a little time and send me that and let me help you overcome what's holding you back and start moving you in that right direction. All it's going to cost you is just a little bit of your time. Before I close the show today, I want to read a quote to you that I feel like really speaks to that suggestion earlier of overcoming the obstacles. And the quote comes from William Durant. So the quote reads, "Forget past mistakes, forget failures, forget everything except what you're going to do now, and do it." This is Travis Lane Jenkins signing off for now. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and what's holding you back to your incredible success, my friend. Take care.